So we want to welcome those that have joined us during the past couple of sessions and those that are joining us here today. Thank you again for taking the time to learn more about school mental health resources. I'm going to be doing like a just very short, quick recap because we have a wonderful guest speaker, like I mentioned. I wanted to give her enough time to showcase the product for today. So as some of you know, for the month of September, we have been hosting a 30-minute weekly session that have focused specifically on specific topics and also highlighting a resource developed by the resource directory team. So during the last couple of sessions, we featured several resources: youth tips, Orange County LGBTQ resources, coping cards, tip sheets for families, youth and mental health concerns during COVID and beyond, and crisis lines. Ingrid's actually going to be placing some of that information in the chat in case you missed it. Next slide. So who we are. The Orange County Healthcare Agency has partnered with the Center for Applied Research Solutions to provide school faculty, teachers, coaches, and parents the tools and resources to support and promote mental health and wellness for the K-12 school community through the resource directory. So we're one of 4 projects in the initiative. Next slide. So for the next 30 minutes, actually now it's going to be 27 minutes, you're going to be hearing about different resources. Even though that this is a very fast open house, we do want it to be a very engaging opportunity for you. Ask questions, utilize the chat. And we're also going to be doing some polling questions at the end to just learn more about how we can support your the work that you're doing and also how to integrate some of these different resources that we are showcasing this month. And so part of the other piece too is if you could open up a second browser and open up a Menti browser or Menti link, which also Ingrid's going to place in the chat so that we're ready to go once we're ready to initiate that poll for you. So thank you so much. Next slide. All right, so today's journey, we talked a little bit about some introduction, some housekeeping, and then also we're going to go through one of the showcasing resources today, and we're going to have a little discussion about how to implement and integrate some of these different resources onto your existing resources that you have, or also enhancing some of the different services and resources that you already have within your school site or agency as well. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some upcoming events for the next couple of sessions for the rest of September. Next slide. All right, without further ado, again, I'm Angela Castellanos, and I'm the School and Community Liaison for the Center for Applied Research Solutions. But I'm also here joined by Heidi Cisneros. I have known Heidi for about 20-something years. I think, right? But in those particular capacities, I mean, she's in those years, she has served in various leadership roles, establishing new policy and practices in systems impacting student mental health and suicide prevention and intervention. For over 25 years, she has provided trainings on suicide and mental health trends, connecting with Gen Z, school safety, school-based services, and crisis response on a local and national level. Currently, she serves as a student safety advocate specializing in prevention and child sexual assault for the Alliance of Schools for Cooperative Insurance Programs, ASCIP. So Heidi, thank you for being here today and take it away.
All right, well, thank you so much, Angela. Great to be here. It's like old times working together again. Yes. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to be with you this afternoon. If we could move to the next slide. We're going to jump right in and kind of think about a little bit about self-care, because all of us come from different backgrounds, but most of us are in roles of service. And if you have a second, if you could go to the chat right now and just tell me, are you a mental health person? Are you a school person? I'd like to learn a little more about you as we move forward. So feel free to type that in the chat room. And while you're doing that, let's think of our question here as we settle in. Why is our self-care important to those we serve? Not just ourselves, but why is it important to those we serve? I see that we have several school counselors. That's great to hear. Health educators, wonderful. So what are some of the reasons? You feel free to to answer and put your responses in the chat room. But one of the things I wanted to emphasize in this area of self-care is that sometimes it's hard for us to take care of ourselves because we're so focused on taking care of others. But it's really imperative that we take care of ourselves so we can serve others. It's similar to the airplane analogy. We've all heard it. Put the mask on yourself first before you can help anyone else. As a school counselor, as a mental health therapist, as a teacher and educator, all of us have to take care of that mask first. If we are not at our best, we will not be able to serve at our best. And that includes making the best decisions, being at our best when our clients need us to be supportive, and then being able to prevent that burnout and that compassion fatigue from hitting us after because we have done so much. So just want to emphasize that point that self-care is not just about us doing for ourselves, but self-care is about also prioritizing others. So thank you. All right, next slide. Many of us have those moments in our career where we're fortunate enough to get to work with colleagues that we truly respect and admire. And this was, of course, one of those opportunities for me, myself, and Angela Castellanos and Tina Rocha. All of us, as Angela mentioned, have been connected for over 20 years. We brought our compassion and our passion together to create this special resource, the other R's in education. We wanted to talk about reconnecting, reclaiming, and reintegrating in educational spaces. In other words, we know about reading, writing, arithmetic, right? That's the original R's. But at this time, when our schools are reopening and children are coming back to school, we have to think about the difficulties of that transition for our students and what we can do to make that transition easier and help them with stability and adjustment so that they can again thrive in the classroom and be their best and achieve what they're meant to achieve, their full potential. And so today we're going to have some time to just introduce this product to you. And I know it's in the chat room now. The link is there for you. We're going to do some exploring. So next slide, please. So first, we want to give you 3 to 4 minutes to kind of jump into the guide. Again, look at the chat room for the link if you don't already have it uploaded on your personal computer. And we want to give you a few moments to think about what are some of the things that jump out at you? What looks exciting? And what are some areas you might have some questions about that perhaps we can provide clarity on today or get back to you in the future, or we can further develop in the future? We're looking for great ideas. And how do you see the 3 R's as an important step in supporting students? You'll notice that in this guide, there are 2 main areas of focus. The transitional piece that I already mentioned about students, and of course, the self-care piece, which we talked about in our opening. So we wanted to be sure that self-care is promoted not only among the counseling professionals and human services professionals, but also our educators at the school sites who are also dealing with our students on a day-to-day basis, who also need to focus and take care of themselves as well. So feel free to start perusing through the guide and let me know. And we're going to have a share out in just a few seconds. Oh, not seconds, of course, but 3 minutes to give you a chance to share some of the pieces that speak to you. You may notice, of course, that it opens up with some definitions around trauma and the impact of trauma on mental health. We want to remember that as our students return to school, that they didn't necessarily all have the same experiences. There's diverse experiences that so many of us as adults, as well as our students, have had during the lockdown and the shutdown and during this time. And so in some instances, that experience could have been much more traumatic than others. Perhaps in some instances, some students had more access to support. And in many instances, some of the adults had more access to self-care and support than others. And so those are the things we want to be aware of so that we can truly support these processes. We need our wonderful educators and we need our wonderful mental health providers to be there as these important moments unfold as our children come back to school, as programs reopen. And so what can we do to support them? So there's some headlines on trauma-informed classroom, and of course, definitions on emotional distress. We're at a time now where we know that across the board, 1 out of 4 Americans are severely impacted by some form of mental health issues. Isolation and social disconnect are all pieces impacting folks from all socioeconomic backgrounds, all ethnic and religious backgrounds throughout our nation. And so together we can identify these needs of reconnecting, and we can help our students with that process as well, which is where that reconnection in the classroom piece comes in. After we talk about the self-care section, that's of course where you'll see things about grounding the classroom and the many activities you can do to set the expectations to help with those tier 1 level mental health supports and implementing those wellness pieces. You know, students need to feel that the work that connects them to the work they did online comes to that classroom physically. They need to relearn the expectations of the classroom. Many of our students haven't interfaced with peers in so long, and now it's the first time they're able to do that again. So we need to expect some behavioral outbursts, some emotional outbursts, and be prepared to mitigate those and support them, and not just come at it from a discipline perspective. And then as the resource moves on, the guide moves on, there are websites and activities that can be implemented throughout the morning, throughout the school day, and gives you a timeline. And for those of you familiar with restorative circles, I think you're probably a great fan of it, such as myself, if you've seen the results. And we've developed an outline that highlights the practices of the circles, both in distance learning as well as in person. And we know that now we have students in both areas of learning, both online and home. And so here is an outline that can be applied to both learning situations. So that kind of gives you the gist of it. I don't want to take away from your time as far as things you're noting. Hopefully there are things in this directory that speak to you. And in your roles, I hope that you'll be able to take this forward and share with your peers and colleagues, and tell them to share with their peers and colleagues, so that we can all rally around each other and keep supporting each other.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is when I was working in the schools, the most common piece that I heard was, we need something practical, we need something fast, right? So the idea behind this particular resource is to highlight some very quick and practical strategies that you can use as an educator, but also you can utilize within your classroom as well. You know, because a lot of times we know teachers or feel that they don't have the training to be able to deliver some of the interventions, but these are very practical pieces that they can do to create that safe environment for students.
Absolutely. And one thing we noticed in all of the research is we realized that it's not about allocating an hour for an activity for mindfulness. 5 minutes is very powerful, and it truly sets the tone for the day. When we're looking at opportunities to prevent issues of behavior, this is exactly the solution, because it is only necessary to take a very small amount of time to get outstanding results. And that's, I think, one of the great things about many of the examples highlighted in this booklet.
Yeah, and in addition also to like teaching self-regulation strategies for students, and also just a combination of eliminating the mental stigma, the best way is for adults to model this behavior so that students are much more connected to the activities, because meditation could be very different for everybody, you know. So it's really about providing some of those practical skills so that educators can model, and then students can also be able to utilize some of these resources as well.
And I know that for many of us, we have this notion that we need our students to catch up on what they've missed and move forward on academics as fast as possible. But we all know that if they're not in the right mindset, they won't be able to learn effectively. And they might be sitting in classrooms, but they're not engaging. They're not absorbing what they need to learn because they're not in the right mind frame. And so again, these 5-minute opportunities, these creative options that we've highlighted are great examples that can get them in that space. So enough from us. We'd like to hear from you. So again, if you'd like to go off mute and share with us or type any comments, we would love to hear from you. And we don't need to go into any particular order. We have 3 things here that we're highlighting for our bullets, and feel free to answer any of these that speak to you. But first and foremost, what excites you? What are some of the things in this directory that appeal to you? Any questions? All those type of things. How can we encourage others to adopt these strategies? What can you do where you work and throughout your community? And then, of course, we're worried about you and we want you to take care of yourself. So what are the commitments that you can make for your own well-being? So anyone want to jump in? Kristen, thank you.
Hey, yeah, I'll jump in real quick and excuse, I got a little one right next to me too.
No worries.
We love little ones.
One, I mean, I'm excited. Just the amount of resources that you guys have on here, it's incredible. I mean, I'm so grateful being able to be a part of these every week. So I've really just kind of been sorting out and sharing with our counseling team. It's been an incredible resource because I feel like we get resources from so many different ways and you get thousands of emails, you know, so it's nice for everything just to be really in one spot, and just the way it's condensed, especially a lot of the like coping cards and things like that are awesome.
It's so wonderful to hear.
I think really right now it's on me of sorting through the information and making sure that, you know, just sharing the right information, not just for our counselors, but able to get it out to the families too, and just get it out in the right way that it's not overwhelming for them too. So really just sharing a lot of it on our websites that families can easily connect to it. And I think just finding a good flow of when to share it out throughout the school year too, so that it's not, you know, just one share out right now. But that we can kind of continue and kind of bring families back to it as we go. And also for our counseling team and our admin team of, you know, going back to it too. That, like you said too, it's a lot of taking care of ourselves too. So we've really been trying to right now put a big focus on supporting our staff, supporting all of our teachers too, because it is, this challenge is all around. It's a lot of trauma in just different ways for everybody. So being able to have these resources, and especially, like I said, condensed into one place, has just been awesome. So I'm very appreciative of you guys.
Thank you, Kristen. That's very nice. Thank you for being here. And it's very nice to hear that it's helpful for the school community. So it's good. Thanks.
Yeah. And you mentioned family, and I appreciate that. We haven't talked much about family today, but many of the activities and the resources we have in this directory, of course, can be utilized at the home, in the home as well, by families and parents. So thank you for mentioning that. You know, when we talk about distribution, one of the strategies I've seen out there is some of the counseling departments kind of sending out a weekly bulletin update to teachers, like here's the you know, classroom management technique of the week, or here's a mindfulness strategy. They give them 3 or 4 choices, but they keep it simple, and they send out 1 or 2, 3 at the most at a time, and they let the teachers kind of look at those. And at first the teachers were a little bit doubtful. Then a few tried it and they saw the results. And so you know how that works. One tells another, they start to believe in it, and pretty soon everyone was using it, and they were excited to hear about the new ideas. And so then people were, you know, on the edge of their seat every week waiting for this bulletin from the counseling department. So that was one strategy to get this information out.
I completely agree with you, Heidi, because when I was at a previous school district, they I used to do a little short, like it wasn't even a newsletter, it was just like a short
Mm-hmm.
paragraph. And it was more like a blog.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get responses every week, like, oh my God, I can't wait for the Monday to come around because you have such great resources. And so they start sharing them and connecting them. And the whole, they're also sharing them with their families. The other piece too that we want to mention is that all of the product is going to be translated into different languages. So that's in the works, that's coming.
And that would be great again for the family piece. So thank you, Kristen, for bringing that up.
Any
All
other?
right, well, we're at our last 3 minutes, so I want to talk about the commitments that you're going to make for yourself. If we can go to the next slide. We were sharing, and then we'll go to the next one after this. Sorry. So my self-care challenge for all of you. We're always great at encouraging others to be well and take care of themselves. And so I want us to commit to ourselves today. In order for you to do your best in this very trying time and this challenging time, we need you to reconnect to whatever it is that inspires you and brings you joy. What is it that you need to reclaim in your life as far as, with the changes in our lifestyle with COVID and safety and those kind of things? What is it that you need to bring back to your life? I know for me, I'm a huge game person. I used to always have game nights, and that was taken away until I invented Zingo, which is Zoom Bingo. And I'm sure someone else has invented it as well. And I invited Angela and several friends, and we played bingo online. And that was a way of reclaiming that experience that brings joy to my life. And then last but not least, what is it that we need to integrate into our life? We don't want to focus on waiting for COVID to be over. We want to think of it in phases. In this phase that we're in right now, what is it that we can reintegrate into our life? Perhaps adapt something, but again, adapting things that are important to us, meaningful, and rejuvenate us so that we're excited and feeling good every morning as we move forward in serving our students. So that's my challenge for you today. I hope that you'll be able to take this, run with it, and do something for yourself, as well as share the other information with your colleagues and getting this information out into your districts, and perhaps finding some way of making it an ongoing effort, because we need to work with our kids throughout the school year, not just September and October, but we will see manifestations of their issues throughout the year. So we need to be on this mindfulness and wellness awareness level on an ongoing basis. So thank you so much for your dedication and your commitment, and so excited to be with all of you today.
Thank you, Heidi. For the next part of it, so Kristen mentioned such a great process for this. One is, we have so many different resources and products. If we can go back to the previous slide, Stephen, we are going to pull up a poll so that we can actually start figuring out the whole goal. One of the goals for the open house for this month is that we wanted to showcase all of these different wonderful resources, but also to get more information from you to see if you would be interested in an implementation series. We don't know what that would look like, but we would like to get some feedback and input from you in regards to what are we missing? Do we need to, I know Kristen mentioned there's so many different wonderful resources out there. And I remember for me as an administrator, I loved it when things just came and ready to implement within that process, right? So it's something very practical. So we would love to host an implementation series, but we want to know if that's something that you would be interested in. So I'll give you like another 30 seconds or so to answer this this question, and then we'll just move on to the next one. So we'll move on to oh, go ahead.
The code is in the chat room then.
Yes. So go open the browser, go to menti.com, and then type in the code so you're able to access the questions or the poll. All right, let's go to the next question. Are there any specific resources that you will hunt down, but we want to talk more specifically about this particular resource. Is there anything that we're missing? We talked about parents, maybe putting a little category for parents, but Heidi mentioned that these are adaptable. So we created the products so they're universal. That's the right word, universal. So you can integrate into different ages and different things like that. And we also put in some resources. But is there anything that we missed in this particular resource in reintegrating? So if you can just put a couple of words, that would be fantastic. I already mentioned that there is that we're translating, and also there's going to be opportunities for schools to request hard copies, so we can send that over. So we'll working on that process for the schools. Okay. Right, cultural considerations. That's something that we can think about. Very, very good. Okay, next question. I know we mentioned that these are very useful to pass on to, to your school site, district-wide, integrate into some of your existing resources or tier systems of support. Is there anything, are you going to pass this on? What will you pass on for this particular piece? We didn't talk about implementation, but these are so many, it's really about what sections can you use from this product, right? Like Heidi mentioned, maybe like highlighted in the weekly tip of the week or the tip of the day, put it on your website. There's so many different strategies that you can use for the implementation of this as well. Next question. I know I'm going pretty fast here. So this is a little, it's not a tricky, it's kind of like an obvious kind of question, but what are the barriers to accessing resources related to school mental health? Last week we talked about there's so many resources, we don't know how to access them, right? That's one. So education might be one, transportation might be another, language might be another. But those are some of the pieces that we talked about last week. In reference to self-care, just connecting the question to the self-care product, is there a barrier to accessing maybe a self-care resource relating to school mental health? Any thoughts about that? All right. Next question. This one relates a little bit connected to the last one. What are some of the challenges to searching and finding student mental health resources? Krista mentioned this earlier. There's a lot of wonderful resources out there, right? So how do we categorize them? That might be a challenge. What are some other thoughts in regards to searching? Maybe some of them are national, and how do we get them more localized to Orange County school communities? That might be a challenge. Too many to choose from, right? Overload of resources. Perhaps maybe giving us ideas and how do we not overload you in so many emails. Maybe there's one location that we, definitely the resource directory is one location where we're housing all of the resources. Last question. Oh wait, that was the last question.
All right.
That was the last question. So
we are on time.
I know, on time. So we want to welcome you next week. Heidi's going to be back to share active approaches to suicide prevention. And this was also a really fun product that we co-authored in creating suicide prevention campaigns. And so it was such a fun product as well. So that one's next week. And then also on the 30th is the Orange Folder Initiative. And that would be, we're going to have a guest presenter, and that would be Clara D'Agostino. So that's on that day, I won't be here. I will be taking care of my self-care during that day. So I'm going to be out of town, taking a little vacation. I know that it's kind of early to take a vacation because the year just started, right? But it's something that was planned a few months
Hey,
ago.
part of self-care is identifying what you need when you need it.
Hey Heidi, you said you dared on the challenge, right? So I'm
That's
taking
right.
that I'm taking
Thank you
that
for
challenge
stepping
right
up.
now. I'm stepping up and taking that challenge. So thank you so much for joining us here today. And again, if you have any additional feedback or questions, this is the way. The next slide is a way for you to connect with us, and please sign up for the next 2 sessions. And we will go from there. So thank you so much and have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.